Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fear to Love to Grace Summit here. I'm Patti Ashley, Dr. Patti Ashley, and I'm so excited to introduce my guest today. She is a well-known expert in the area of spirituality, mindfulness, health, wellness, and she's been an inspiration to me for quite a while. Her books have carried me through a lot in my life, and so I'm so happy to introduce Joan Borysenko.
Hi
Welcome,
there,
Joan.
Patti. Hi there, everybody. I'm really happy to be here with you, Patti, and talk about subjects that, they touch every one of us. They touch our heart and they make a big difference in how we live our lives.
Yeah, that's been your life's work. I know you started at Harvard with John Kabat-Zinn, correct? And
No,
all,
no, I didn't
oh,
start with Johnny Kabat-Zinn. I
okay,
started at Harvard. I worked with Herb Benson,
okay.
actually for 20 years, Herb Benson being the person who really first introduced meditation into medicine. He was a cardiologist and noticed that it made a difference in people's blood pressure and stress response.
Mhm.
And then Johnny Kabat-Zinn was right down the road at the University of Massachusetts in Worcester. And his primary interest was really mindfulness and health. And so I've been really fortunate to work with Herb and be influenced by John, who's really made such a difference, really all around the world, kind of the Johnny Appleseed of mindfulness.
Right, right. Well, that was the beginning, right? When people
Yeah.
were really realizing that the mind body was really a thing.
That's absolutely right. Yes. Benson's major interest starting out was the placebo effect, the fact that,
Oh, okay.
about 50% of effects of drugs aren't due to the drug, but to the power of our own belief in that particular healing modality.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting. I love this field.
I know it is so exciting, and it's exciting that you've created your work with spirituality. I know the books I have here that I can put my hands on are A Women's Journey to God, Finding the Feminine Path, and A Woman's Book of Life,
Yes.
The Biology, Psychology, and Spirituality of the Feminine Life Cycle. You can tell books have been used when they've got these sort of
Right.
tabby things.
That's right. Or whether when they've been dropped in the bathtub too, Patti. Those are always my favorite ones to sign.
That's such a compliment, I would imagine.
Yes.
You take the book with you. But my work with women and spirituality has been really important. So your work has really inspired me a lot. Is there more you can say about what inspired you to continue on this path? I know you.
Well, I have had, looking back at my life, such an interesting path. It hasn't always been an easy path. While I recognize some people wake up without any suffering at all, for many of us, the suffering that we have turns out to be a grace. And so I had many episodes of difficulty that somehow or other opened the way for me. Kind of my signature story, Patti, was becoming psychotic as a 10-year-old. And really, I was in a state of perpetual terror. I thought I'd seen a scary movie with my mother about headhunters with poison darts, and I thought they were breaking into the house, and I started to hallucinate them in the day as well as dream about them at night.
Mm,
And then I developed really OCD. And the belief I had was, since I was the only one who could see the headhunters, I had to do things to keep them away so they wouldn't kill off my family. I
wow.
was 10.
Wow.
So if you think of a 10-year-old living in what I can only describe as abject, indescribable terror,
Right.
24 hours a day. There was no respite in sleep if I could sleep. I did all these rituals, the famous hand washing rituals, and literally probably a dozen others, even things like all my reading. I had to turn the book upside down and then read backwards 3 times without interruption. It was that kind of thing.
Oh my.
And after about 6 months of that, there didn't seem to be anything to do. My parents had taken me to excellent psychiatrists in the Boston area, and there was nothing back then. There was no drugs, no Klonopin, no Prozac, no behavior therapy, no mindfulness, nothing. But I started to think, where have I ever experienced peace? And I used to go every summer to a camp for Jewish girls in Massachusetts. And there we would sit in this pine grove by the lake. It was so peaceful and beautiful. And on Friday night, that's when the Jewish Sabbath begins, and it goes through Saturday and ends Saturday night. And there would be services. And of course, we didn't call meditation back then. But there was, music, quiet reflection, and just ancient melodies that take you to some other place. It was beautiful. And there was one particular song in English which welcomed the divine feminine, the Sabbath queen. In Hebrew, we call her the Shekhinah. And so we would welcome the Sabbath queen who would usher in peace. And I loved that song. And I was sitting there 6 months into the psychotic episode in my usual state of terror saying, wow, when's the last time I was peaceful? And then thinking, I'm not going to get to go to camp this year because I'm like whacked out there. And as I started to think about the song, I started to bring myself into that space to imagine being in that pine grove. And all of a sudden, it was like somebody flipped a switch and the terrible fear just dissipated. And I was in a state of such love and such peace, like divine peace, like nothing I had ever experienced before. And in that state, I had exquisite clarity and creativity. Now I would say, aha, it awakened intuition. It connected me with some larger source of being. And I just had an instantaneous knowing, I can recover from this horrible terror. This is not permanent. I can do this. And at the same time, I knew exactly how to do it. I had the insight, if you keep doing the rituals, Joan, you'll stay stuck. And when I thought about, well, how am I going to get back to this peace again, was like a poem flowed through me. And I wrote down the words of the poem, which was about the light and about we're never alone. That light is there from the moment our soul incarnates. And I still use that poem, Patti, many times every year when I'm, stressed out or feeling like, where is that light? And I thought, I know what I'll do. Every time I'm scared, I'll say the poem and it will bring me back to this state of peace. And that, I should have known then. In fact, I did, that I would be a psychologist, because that was really an interesting strategy. I don't know if it would ever work for anyone else who has OCD or is psychotic, because it was a deeply personal receiving of this poem in what I would call a state of grace, connected with something larger, where I just ended up in that space. And so, indeed, within a couple of days, 3 or 4 days, the dreams stopped, the headhunters stopped coming, all was well. And it left me filled with questions. It left me with like one question about biology. We were studying the brain. This was 5th grade.
Mhm.
And I had the thought, how could the human brain like be hallucinating things one moment and then suddenly the whole thing stops and you perceive the world in a different way? And then I also became interested in psychology, not because I knew what it was, but I knew that it had something to do with helping people who were scared or, had some kind of trouble with their mind. And I thought, I'd like to grow up and help people like that. And then the third thing that it left me with, which compelled the spiritual search all my life, was the thought, what is this state that I came into of perfect peace where I felt so safe, so loved, so filled with light, and so filled with wisdom and knowing? And I just knew that I couldn't have been the only one in the history of time who'd ever been in that state. And I thought, there has to be a way to get back. There has to be a way to get back. And all I could think of was, well, if it exists in Judaism, they left it out in Hebrew school. Um, and then I thought maybe some church knows. And I started, there was no internet. We had like a Encyclopedia Britannica Junior in the school library.
Right.
But I did what I could. And as I grew, of course, I realized every religious tradition has doorways to get into this place. Many of them have forgotten about those doorways, maybe even forgotten that that state exists.
Yeah.
But clearly, many people have been in that state, and that's a place where you can really change your mind, where you recognize the magnificence of this universe. And in particular, for me, what I recognized is, despite all appearances, in the middle of the most frightening situations, the whole experience of being human in this plane of existence is made out of the energy of love. And I know that sounds like ridiculous when you look around and, God forbid, people are killed in holocausts. Some people, have such a difficult time, and others have such a good time. But it's not easy to see. There was a wonderful saying of Saint Paul in the New Testament, and to paraphrase that, it's, now we see but through a glass darkly. And that came with the promise that someday we'll see face to face. So I would say, in some respect, I had a glimpse face to face at 10, and I've had many more throughout my life. I've been prone to kind of spiritual and mystical experience.
Wow, that's a fantastic story. Like you said, there wasn't Risperdal and the treatment back then that they have now. So I wonder what would be different, because I think the kiddos today experiencing that, and everybody wants to fix it. So the intuition you had, is that story is so beautiful. It's almost like me imagining that the psychotic experience being because I am so wanting to connect to that place where I ended up connecting. And when I got there, I knew it, and it carried me, and it's my life's work. It's a beautiful story, Joan.
Yes, exactly. And I think, I was a city kid, and just being out in nature it is a connection to the spiritual. And that's what I first recognized, is the need to be part of something larger. And how do we do that? Because it does seem that we're so small and separated, and yet all you have to do is raise your eyes to the sky, even if you live in the city, and a different part of your brain gets triggered and a different inner experience gets triggered.
Right. And that's what happened to me when my father died when I was 11, was I
Ah,
started saying, where's God? Why can't I go to heaven? And I couldn't kill myself because I was Catholic and I'd go to hell and I wouldn't see him that way. So my whole spiritual quest started about the same time as well. And in this grief that no one, because you didn't have therapists back then either, no one wanted to talk to me about it. People had sympathy. Oh, poor Patti, we don't want to talk about it. And so my
right.
whole life's journey of finding God and understanding grief led me to this other experience of losing Lawrence, the same way I lost my dad. And really not the part, but the motivation behind my book was to write these stories because I wanted to understand grief and spirituality in a way that I didn't at 11. And what do I know now? And I learned I know nothing, right? No, that's not true. But just the whole mystery, I guess, is what I meant to say. Not that I don't know anything. I think I know a lot,
Yes.
but it's a mystery,
Mhm.
a lot of it.
It is a mystery. And when you're little, you think in some way, I'll solve the mystery. I'm on, I'm on the path. And finally, there comes the surrender. It's
This
like,
is,
if the mystery was meant to be solved, we wouldn't be here.
yeah. And I was so fortunate to have met you with Lawrence when we were planning a retreat center here in Colorado and close to where you used to live before you moved to San
That's
Jose,
right.
and was delighted to talk with you about our ideas. And he really wanted to bring more spirituality into psychotherapy and addiction treatment. And I think that's a big part of what you do as well, correct? I mean,
Well, it is. It's interesting because in the field of addiction, now there's a recognition we really need to introduce mindfulness. But I can recall an experience that I had with a group of young people who were in an addiction treatment facility. And oh my goodness, most of them were opiate addicts, which is the unfortunate fact these days. Many young opiate addicts. And they were in different stages of, most had just been through medical withdrawal. They were falling asleep. They were running out for cigarettes. And I'm sitting there thinking like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have these kids for an hour. What am I going to do with them? And here's what I did. We had an experience of awe that was transformative. And
mm,
let me contextualize that for you and your viewers, Patti. Uh, Awe is one of 8 positive emotions that a wonderful psychiatrist from Harvard, Dr. George Valiant, described as really one working definition of spirituality. In
mm,
fact, there's a wonderful free PDF you can get online. If you look up George Valiant, Vaillant, and spirituality, you'll come up with a free monograph.
mm,
And in it, he's talking about the influence of positive emotion on our lives and saying, if psychiatry would deal more with bringing forth positive emotion instead of fixating on negative emotion, we'd get a lot further. And he goes on to say that spirituality is not about sacred texts, it's not about theology,
mhm.
it's about a deep experience. And I was riveted because I had the kind of deep experience that George Valiant was talking about. He said, what spirituality is the capacity to be in a state of awe, and things like awe, love, compassion,
Mm,
gratitude, hope, joy, peace, and forgiveness.
mhm.
He said these are what constitutes spirituality. So I was walking in to this group of the young opiate addicts in the recovery center, and I thought, how can I induce a spiritual experience? And I thought, most everybody has experienced awe at one point or another. You know, even for some of these opiate addicts, getting high induced some state of awe.
Mhm.
Uh, and, you know, I said, well, I live in New Mexico. I experience awe all the time. Every time the sun rises and sun sets, it looks like our red earth and our mountains are on fire from within. And of course, you know, if you say that to someone, they start searching in their own mind for experiences of awe. And this room, we did like just a little 5-minute meditation, going back to a time where they'd experienced awe.
Mhm.
And you could feel the change in the room. They accessed, most of them, that state of grace, which was the same thing I accessed as a child that brought me out of that mental illness.
Wow.
And then we began to share it. And you could see, like, oh my God, the light is coming back in this kid's eyes.
Yeah.
And it was like that, lights going on in the room. And
Yeah.
then I said, you know, it's because of experiences like this that we want to have that experience of deep belonging and union with something larger. That's what we look for when we take drugs. And they all agreed.
Yeah.
And then the very thought of, oh, that experience is available to me in different ways. Maybe, just maybe,
Mhm.
I I can recover from this. And of course that is the state of hope, which is an amazing state of body and mind. And that's part of spirituality as well. So I think you and Lawrence were definitely on the right track in terms of spirituality and addiction. And for a lot of people, religion is a part of addiction. But I want to quote my really good friend, Rachel Remen, who has written 2 books of healing stories, REMEN, Rachel Remen. She wrote a great book called Kitchen Table Wisdom, and another one, My Grandfather's Blessings. And
Mhm.
each story, just, you know, you read it and you think, the world is good. Miracles happen. People recover from things. And you, of course, know this. You're full of these wonderful healing stories, Patti. And what Rachel said is, she said, religion is a bridge to the spiritual, but the spiritual lies beyond religion. Sometimes religions bring people to the spiritual, but at other times, people get stuck on the bridge of religion without crossing over.
Mhm.
So they're related but different.
Right.
And anyhow, we need more portals, whether they're religion or going to help someone else, which brings forth a sense of compassion from us, whatever. And we need inspiration,
Mhm.
which is really your business these days, you know, taking the difficult experience of the grief that you felt and still feel at Lawrence's sudden death, and that, of course, grafted onto the grief of your dad's death. And this is your life purpose. And that's often, we don't look at difficult experiences of grief and loss as spiritual experiences, but they're doorways to grace. They can be.
Oh, absolutely. And that's Lawrence had lost his wife a few years prior to him and I moving into relationship. And he was creating this curriculum called From Fear to Love to Grace, because what
Ah,
he described was his heart was cracked open when he lost Susan, 20 years marriage. He was devastated. And he said, I experienced things in my heart that I didn't know existed. And that to me is grace.
yeah.
Is a lot of what you're saying. I love the word awe. It almost feels like grace and awe are kind of are friends.
Well, they are friends. All these positive emotions are friends. And I think, you know, they often the experiences that crack us wide open, they're nothing we would have sought. They're everything we didn't want.
Right.
And grace has that aspect. It comes to us regardless of whether we want it or not. We cannot command it to come in any way, because it also comes in beautiful ways, you know, sudden bursts of creativity, bursts of awe, wonder. All of these things exist. But I got to tell you, my very favorite understanding of grace, and this came from a late Hindu teacher, Sri Ramakrishna, and he has a very famous quote, and it is that the winds of grace are blowing all the time, but it is up to us to raise our sails. And this is what you've done. You had this awful experience of losing Lawrence, and you just raised your sails. You said, I'm going to write a book. This was so in Lawrence's heart, from fear to love to grace. I'm going to write a book about it. And then I'm going to do a summit. I'm going to share it with others. That's raising your sails, letting grace carry you, and letting the revelations of that grace illuminate other people.
Well, thank you, Joan. And I feel he's kind of helping me lift the sails. It feels almost like we're doing it together in a way. I feel he's very present and very happy, because he really wanted to get this work out in the world. So it means a lot to me to hear you say that, and to be able to continue his legacy, which I know he had big heart and really wanted to bring that out in the world. So thank you. That was beautifully said.
Thank you.
Very touching. So is there anything else you want to share with us today?
Well, you know, the main thing I want to share with people is hope, because we live in a time where things are falling apart. All kinds of things, from our environment to all around the world, political systems, the effects of so many immigrants who have lost their countries because of war, because of famine, because of climate change, because of dictators who create genocide. And we have such a flood of people who have no home. It's a time of tremendous global trauma. And it's just easy, I think, for people to become discouraged. And that even here in the United States, no matter what side of politics you're on, I think everybody is deeply affected by the divisiveness. So many people in an angry state of mind, or a hopeless state of mind. And we often can't do very much. Not all of us can do something on a bigger scale like you're doing right now, or, you know, some activity that touches many people. But we can all do little activities. We can be kind to the person in front of us. These days, there's such a renewed interest in psychological circles about kindness, because if you're kind to somebody else, it makes you feel wonderful. Remember a long time ago, the book Random Acts of Kindness? This is a wonderful way to brighten your own day and that of someone else. I'd say about a year ago, Patti, and then I'll finish. I know we're out of time.
You're fine.
I was trying to park my car in the Santa Fe Plaza, which can be very crowded with cars. And I found a wonderful parking space right by the La Fonda Hotel, famous hotel. I was so excited. And I get into the parking space, and then I'm out and I'm, you know, looking in my purse for change, just pulling things out. I've got to feed that meter. And a couple walked by, and the woman said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll feed the meter for you. And they put like 8 quarters or something, enough to, give me all the time that the meter would allow.
Mhm.
And I thought that was an amazing thing. And they walked off. I could see they were so pleased. They were so happy. And I was so pleased. I think of that couple all the time.
Yeah.
And when I think how people are often unkind to each other, and that somehow from the time I was a kid to now, politeness has declined,
Mhm.
I thought we can all do our little part, that they did something for me that I can still go in my heart and feel.
Yeah.
And we can all do that. We can contribute to that kind of healing, wholeness, and spirituality. The littlest thing, let somebody who's trying to get into traffic hang back and let them in. Feed a parking meter, give somebody a compliment. And what we know is when our heart is generous like that, we reap the benefits in terms of our own mood and our own health. And keep the hope rolling, everybody.
Yeah, that's a great message because it is somewhat hopeless at times in our busy lives right now. And what is the message of holding that? And what you're saying is these random acts of kindness, of being able to connect and see another human. And that, yeah, I think with our cell phones and our all of our media, we've, and our busyness, I uh, was going to ask you about Thomas Merton's poem about, the rush and pressure of modern day being a
Yes.
type of violence, because that hit me hard when I heard you say that about 10 years ago.
Yes. Wasn't that a powerful thing? I'm thinking this guy
Yeah.
is a monk. And what he was doing, he was writing letters to a young activist. People can Google that. And what he was really saying is, your activism and busyness is itself a form of violence.
Mhm.
And I feel that sometimes in my own life, Patti. I'm so busy and I think like, oh my God, I'm going to pull my hair out. I'm going to have to disappoint a bunch of people because,
Yeah.
we've all had this. Like, I have a deadline. Oh, my computer just died. Then my printer won't go online.
Right.
Then, the dog just ate something and spewed it all over the house.
Right.
Modern life requires a lot of maintenance, and we're busy on every front.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I realize I am so busy. We're all stretched out, so there's no like period of grace. We don't have a cushion of time, and it often makes me feel um, angry, upset, short-tempered. And I'm thinking, I'm kind of naturally a nice person, and it brings out my worst.
Yeah.
So I think Merton was exactly right. And I think this is a good piece of advice based on this, Patti. We all need to take a day off.
Yes.
Sabbath. There are more books on the Sabbath coming out these days because we have to refresh
Where's
ourselves.
Sunday? I say that all the time. When I was a kid, we made sandwiches and we took naps and had sandwiches and watched Ed Sullivan on Sunday. And we didn't, you clean the house on Saturday and you rested on Sunday. So I always say, where's Sunday? What happened to Sunday?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, if we could all find a little Sunday and rest, that's good advice in the middle of our busyness. Speaking of which, thank you so much for taking time to do this with me today. What a gift.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll have your website when the launch comes out for people to access. And thank you for all the wonderful references that you mentioned and spelt for us. That's great. And maybe we'll be able to type those up too and have them available.
Wonderful.
Since
Wonderful. May your wonderful book and message reach further and further and further. That's something anyone can do if you've enjoyed the summit and enjoyed Patti's book. Help spread the word.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you so much. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.